Hello, and welcome to Proximity to Whiteness. I am your host, Alessandra Iriarty Canales. Today, I will be interviewing my father, Gabriel Canales. I am here to explore something deeply personal and deeply political. Growing up as Latine in predominantly white spaces and the inner conflict that comes from constantly navigating between cultures. I want to start by grounding this podcast with a few key terms. First is nepantla. This is a Nahuatl word popularized by Chicana scholar Gloria Anzaldúa and further explained by Ana Luis Keating. This term explains how navigating cultures is a messy and painful self-reflection to, quote, see through restrictive cultural and personal scripts, end quote. Another important concept is intersectionality. As Lisa A. Flores explains, intersectionality is about, quote, recognizing the interconnectedness of gender, race, class, and heterosexuality, end quote, amongst other identifiers. Intersectionality reminds us that our identities do not exist in isolation. Instead, they interact to shape how we experience the world. Finally, conocimiento. This is an epistemology that, quote, incorporates self-reflection, imagination, intuition, sensory experiences, rational thought, outward-directed action, and social justice concerns to make insightful connections among apparently disparate events, persons, experiences, and realities, end quote. This podcast will use Testimonio, a genre of storytelling and creation of knowledge that tells Latines to, quote, write from their lives, end quote, or, in this case, speak about our lives. This allows Latines to share personal experience, not just for the sake of expression, but for the sake of collective truth-telling and healing. This podcast is about educating myself beyond what white institutions have taught me. We'll explore how we resist, how we heal, how we find ourselves again in the face of our ancestors, in the stories we tell, and in the communities we build. Let's begin.
Check 1 2 1 2.
Can you say like your name and then your relation to me and then like what you identify as ethnically?
Okay. So hello, my name is Gabriel Canales Jr. I'm the father of Alessandra Iriarty Canales, and I suppose I have a deep feeling that I'm Mexican, with pushing towards more indigenous. But I guess that is also backed up with DNA, that I am more indigenous than I am anything else.
So, what was your experience like growing up? Like, was it predominantly white? Was it predominantly like Mexican people?
I was considered minority, and at the time, anybody that looked like me or was Mexican, they were a lot of the times migrant workers, or at least in our area.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like we were technically quote unquote American. I happened to be American because I was born here,
Yeah.
but it was because my parents were also working here. And so the big thing there was to be able to get your papers. So there would be a lot of guys that would marry white ladies so that they can be okay, basically safe to be here.
So, you would categorize, where did you say you grew up again?
It's a little town called Toppenish.
So, you would categorize Toppenish as like a predominantly white area?
Probably mostly when I was there at the time. Maybe not now.
Yeah.
I bet now the Mexican is the majority.
Do
But
you?
who are the owners? Who are the owners of the farms? It definitely not all the Mexicans, right? So,
Do you know what what work your mom and your dad did?
yeah. So when my mom was growing up, she used to pick cotton.
Mm-hmm.
They used to do potatoes. So what they did, because the Bajaros are from Texas, and so as you know, the border moved on them, right? So their family was it used to be Mexico, then it became America, but they followed the work. So New Mexico, Arizona, California, but they eventually ended up here, and then built planted roots here, like bought a home. But it was always working in, like, my mom used to work warehouses when she was older, like canning, things like that.
And what did Grandpa do?
He mainly worked on farms. He taught himself how to do everything. So he would weld. He was a mechanic for the tractors. He would prep the fields to be harvested. You know what I mean? And then and then they would pick the fields as well. When I was a kid, the differences that I noticed from white people and Latino families is that they would always send their parents to retirement homes. And it's funny how it seems like America takes away family. Latino homes are multi-generational. We have the parents, we have the kids, we have the kids that are having kids, right? And they're all in one household. Who's the knowledge base of the family? The older people, the tribal knowledge, right? So they're basically taking away, like, canning. My mom used to can. I don't
Yeah.
know how to can because I didn't have that connection when she was older. But that's the thing that I was thinking about America, is that it takes away the family. It promotes, like, you girls leaving my home, and then now you have three payments from us. They have my payment, like, for rent.
Yeah.
They have your payment for rent and Gabby's payment for rent. When everybody could have been staying with us, we could have had one rent, and we could have been saving that other money for the family. But I remember as a kid, American kids would make fun of that situation.
When was the first time you realized you were treated differently because of your ethnicity?
Well, I think actually some of it kind of stemmed from my house,
Really?
because my parents felt it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they would always say, "Oh, my mom would always be like, "Oh, we're laborers. You're not gonna be able to do that. We're not smart enough. Our people aren't smart enough." But she was just saying that about herself, She didn't feel like she was smart enough because she started working when she was 11.
What's your first experience being treatedly because of your
So
ethnicity outside of the home?
I was in swim team, and it was one of my teammates, and she was just like yelling at me and goes, "You freaking Mexican."
Like as an
Not that
insult.
Mexican. Yeah, so Mexican isn't a bad word. To her, it was a bad word, and in that situation, it didn't feel great, right?
Yeah.
Because I was a Mexican,
Yeah.
she made it apparent that I was a Mexican, so I wasn't technically American then, right?
Yeah.
But at the time, I didn't realize that that's how I felt, or that was the intention. But now I see that her intention was to show that I'm not as American as her because I'm Mexican. Now, as an adult, if somebody would have said that, I would have been like, okay. I wouldn't talk to them or whatever, but it wouldn't hurt me as much because I know it's not me, it's them.
Have there been any moments for you where you felt like people have questioned how much you belong?
And I don't think I really felt it. At the same time, when I was younger, I was super naive. I just didn't care because I was just alive. I drove my car. I did sports. I drove fast. I'd get pulled over. I never got, disrespected by any police officers. All the people that I've been pulled over by have been really nice. I've never had like a bad situation. It was when I was young, I was just super naive. It's almost like that saying, ignorance is bliss type thing. But, the more you know, and especially now, it's more stressful because I know. I was almost convinced. Chasing him down to feel like I was part of the crew, mob mentality took over. My true self was afraid to come through. What did he do wrong but wear his hair long and claim his people with pride? What did we do? You know it. We tried to tear him down. They did all the damage, but I was a coward in the back. To speak up, to plead for them to stop. I broke my own heart that day, by association. I included myself in the energy that would eventually bring him down. We chased him all through the school ground. Why wasn't he safe? Did teachers look the other way? The crowd had him cornered on the wall, too tired to run for his life any longer. I watched in disbelief as he did what he could to protect himself from the jeers and the aggression. One by one, they took turns smacking his belly. His face eventually fell sadly into his palms. Yep, he became jelly. I have never felt so low as his hair fell to the weight of gravity. It triggered a body response. I was sick to my stomach. Did we feel so worthless? Why weren't we taught to love ourselves more? Why did we feel the need to hate the unspoken half of who we are? I think I repressed the memory of his last name. All I recall is he was a bigger dude than most of us, long hair and wore a leather vest. He was a big native boy. His name was James. He seemed desperate to have a friend, but we couldn't be bothered. That is the day I was almost convinced. As I reflected from that incident, it was life-changing. I think the reason I was part of it is because I felt I was lifting myself up by making him less. But it was just that situation was more self-hate, in my opinion.
I think sometimes I felt less than, right?
Yeah.
Like I knew because I went to school and I knew math just like they did. I knew poetry just like they did, or Shakespeare. But my parents were both uneducated and they were both laborers. So I still felt like when we were in a public setting or in a setting where there were other parents that seemed, I assumed they were rich because they were white, right?
Yeah.
So I felt different about it, or less than, I suppose. Not as confident. So
Yeah.
I would probably look down on myself as my parent. So, but that is one thing, because my dad had broken English. I
Yeah.
was ashamed of him for the longest time, right? I was embarrassed
Sure.
that he didn't know how to speak English well. And so, I didn't always want him around. But come to terms with that, you know, growing up and understanding how much I respect him for, leaving when he was a little kid, and he came to America when he was 14, had no shoes, and did it on his own, and became a man, had a family, bought a house, and
Yeah.
he was able to get me, you know, his goal was to have me work inside. Doesn't mean I made more money, but I don't work outside like a donkey, and he felt sometimes like he was a donkey.
You talked about like hiding or like being ashamed of your dad
Mm-hmm.
and of yourself. How'd you react to that? Like, what did you hide about yourself? Or like, what did you downplay
Um,
about your
well,
identity?
well, the identity part was obvious. In my little neighborhood, I was Mexican. But what I tried to do is not have my parents around for like my games and things like that. So like any public events, I didn't have my parents around. And I think I probably would have told them like, hey, you guys don't need to be there. It's just a game or whatever. they probably would have had joy watching me. I mean, I was embarrassed to be who I was. And the other thing too is like probably parts of it is because I don't think they knew what in schools they didn't know what to do. And I think the teachers cared. They honestly cared
Yeah.
for us, but they didn't know what to do with kids that only spoke Spanish first. So they were all in special ed. That's a connection that I had when I was younger, is that if you spoke Spanish, you go to special ed. So I tried to avoid the shit out of speaking Spanish. I tried to avoid of. I used to see. It's funny how ironic it is that my first car was a Camaro. My parents bought it for me. I was embarrassed to have that Camaro because that was like a car that a lot of Mexicans would drive. And so I was kind of embarrassed about it. But the thing is the thing that I never focused on was how grateful I was to have a car. There was a lot of kids in my school that didn't have cars.
Yeah.
And you know, and I wasn't grateful for my parents to do that for me. So I was I became very selfish towards my parent. I was an ass to them because I thought I was better than my parents because I knew how to speak English better than them. And I was educated in the school where other white kids were. So I basically demonized my own parents in my own head because of who they were, which was Mexican, and they were laborers and, you know, were uneducated.
Like the whole thing.
I never really associated them with being loving parents who took care of me. And I never, not once did I ever suffer I always had a bed to sleep on, a house to live in, a TV to watch, and food in my belly. And when I wanted to do sports, I did all the sports. You know, I played football, I wrestled, I played basketball, baseball, swimming. I had every opportunity, and they afforded that for me, and I was ungrateful to them. So that is what growing up Mexican in America for me is that alienation of family, right? I don't know if my parents felt it because I think they were kind of on board with it, like, oh yeah, you're better than us. Go ahead and go hang out with your white friend. That's why we used to always hang with the Bajaros because they were technically citizens, right? So they were technically not the raza. My dad's family, they were all from Mexico. So we didn't hang out with them as much. You know what I mean? Because my mom thought, oh, they're dirty. My mom was very racist like that. But the thing is she, you know, now has a home and all that, right? And a kid that's educated and American, and she needed something to elevate herself with, and that was how she did it.
I could tell that I wanted to be different, but because of how my mom treated Mexicans, right? I mean, we all knew that we were Mexican. She knew she was, but she wasn't that Mexican. Like, she was different because she was technically a citizen. I was born here, so I was a citizen, so I was different. She was hoping to be more white because, like, the magazines that she would order were the Victorian ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like white dresses, big hats, pretty flowers, tea time, you know, stuff like that. I think that's partly why she did her rose garden, you know, because it was kind of like that setting, kind of vineyard, you know. But really, I just thought I was American because I was American, right? You know, when I was swimming, I wanted to be in the Olympics for the American team. I had never thought, you know, oh, I'm going to be in the Olympics for the Mexican team. It was just that I thought I was American. But like you know, I said before, I was more ashamed of the Mexican side. Like, nope, I don't want to be like that. So I never tried. And these were all my assumptions, right? Because they drive that car, I don't want to be in that car. Or, you know, they play soccer, so I don't want to play soccer. That's a Mexican sport. los consejos. Crow, the sounds of lessons, but no one listens, unable to hear, closed off by the noise pollution. Crow, hear me now. It's as if the degree of loudness weren't high enough. I'm right here in plain sight. Crow, in your face, I can see the lines and porous texture. Your age doesn't mean wisdom. Crow, I keep calling, endlessly, tirelessly. Heed today's session, but more deaf ears. Crow, paying attention to the distractions of our own making so as to feel successful and with purpose. Crow, guidance is laid out on the plane of which we are existing. It's always been there. It's always been accessible.
What do you think helped you change your perspective about yourself and about your culture?
I mean, honestly, I think it's listening to other leaders of other countries and
Interesting.
how they talk about their own people. It's kind of like they're more holistic to where, well, I want all my people to be free. I want all my people to be able to have liberty
Yeah.
and to be able to live in a home and eat. And also, we have social responsibilities for the world. You know, I don't want to keep digging up holes for minerals, you know, that's going to destroy our world. The more we destroy our world, it hurts our world that we're going to live in for our future kids. While in the American situation, they were like, well, we need to make some money. So it's how can I make money by doing this? Because we probably could all, you know, be fed, but you know, I don't think people make money that way, right? If you're sharing the wealth, then where's the money coming from? They're not. Their heart isn't in the people, and I think that's the other thing about America is there's no identity. Like Mexicans want to take care of Mexicans, Cubans want to take care of Cubans. Americans, there's so many different cultures that they try to just become American, and there is no real identity. And I find my identity in my parents, and also respect the journey that they had. They made my life so easy, and I treated them like shit for it. You know, for at
Yeah.
least a time anyway. But I totally respect them for working since they were babies, basically. When they were in elementary, you know, junior high, they were working, and they worked the rest of their lives. How can you not respect that, right? They did a lot for me, but also actually taking the time to think about it. Like, you know, all these white kids that used to say shit or who I wanted to impress, I never saw them again. You just start to figure out, you know, as you go along where your allegiances should be, and that should be with your family. And like I said in the beginning, that's what it felt like when I first noted, right? Is like I noticed that Americans when I was growing up, they didn't really take care of their family. I just didn't realize at the time what my parents were doing for me, right? You kind of figure it out when I went to college, you know, and I had to be like on my own and figure it out too, you know. You start figuring stuff out. You know, I took Chicano studies too. That's also when I was starting to question my faith too, because we were raised Catholic, and it was like, well, my ancestors didn't know Catholicism or Christianity. That was raped into us.
When do you think was about the time you started, like, really questioning these beliefs within yourself about what it meant to be Mexican?
I think it was after high school when I was, you know, in college and, you know, doing Chicano studies, you know what I mean? But the thing is when I learn something, I think, oh, that must be the exact truth. I never really grew up questioning what I was taught. Up until recently, even if somebody presented me something, I'm thinking to myself, oh, okay, so maybe that is true. Part of the learning process is to question why somebody would say that. So even back in the day, I questioned my faith and was having more pride in who I was, but I found more pride in being Spanish versus indigenous. So
Yeah.
I got into to learning flamenco and the Spanish dances and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So I was trying to get more into the conqueror side, right? Because I
Yeah.
still didn't want to be considered Mexican. I still wanted to be American, but I also wanted to have identity. That's the other thing is like, you know, I feel American, but you only feel as American as much as I can. After a while, it hits you in the face like, oh, I'm not as American as I thought. Because if ICE were to come, they'd probably snatch me up. You know, those kind of rude awakenings, stuff like that.
As you've gotten older, what traditions or stories or like lessons do you think helped you connect to your roots?
Well, I think that's hard because a lot of my traditions were based on, Christianity holidays. So I mean, I don't think I had a bad experience, growing up.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it was just there was nothing about my culture. I thought, being Catholic was my culture, but more and more like lately about like the spirit world and ancestors and being connected to them, more and more that is what's intriguing to me, because even as a kid, I used to have interesting dreams about stuff like that, and so I felt like when I was a kid I was connected, but you don't realize it because you're not focused on that, right? You're never taught how to treat that, so that noise kind of goes away. Supposedly my line of people, my family, they were, more like shaman type, right? I don't know if that's the right word because in their tribes they probably had a specific word for somebody that was more in tune to that, but it seems like I'm paying attention more.
It's definitely like an emotional thing, right? Because they always talk about like our ancestors, they never left us. You know what I mean? They're always here and they're still here.
So one of the good ones, that's the title of it. Completely assimilated, don't want to rub the wrong way or associated with the ones that do wrong. They kind of look like me, but I like the haircut. Mama said don't cause waves. It doesn't matter if they talk shit about me. It don't mean nothing. But it makes me mad and I push it down. I want to feel better, so we fuck with the natives, not knowing my line comes from raped so-called savages. I wear my jeans with my shirt tucked in. Look, mama, I'm well-mannered American. Can't wait to make some money to afford the ability to marry an American girl and whiten up my babies. My Spanish sounds like shit. The Latins think less of me with their broken English, but I'm still the butt of the ass of this country's joke. I guess I was mad that day. Well, and that's just it. It's not about the white people. It's about
The
the,
system.
yeah, I mean, a lot of white folks treated me great and they still do. But in the end, the way they get treated compared to how I get treated is going to be different. Because I remember I had a coach. He was my swim coach. His name is Monahan.
Mm-hmm.
And he's actually very anti disgusting people like Trump, right?
Sure.
To this day. But he was a white guy and his dad was a doctor. And I think he was more Mexican than I was. He wanted to be Mexican so bad, it seemed like. He loved the culture, he loved the people. His family treated Mexicans with true respect. To this day, he's like, these guys are doing evil stuff. Look at this. So he's still for the lucha, he's still there for the fight. And he's more brave about it than I am. But a
For
lot of
sure.
times I feel like, the people that should be opening up like that are white people, because if I were to do it, I'm gonna be the one going to jail, not them, right? In my experience, the police are shooting black people and getting away with it. White people shoot up places and they get treated with more respect than a kid that's just walking down the street with a hood on. I see it, and it just seems like, oh well, that's just how it's going to be if I were to get involved. Maybe that's what they want, because I think if I were to say something, people would listen. But it is what it is, I guess, at the moment.
At the moment. Can you share a microaggression that you have experienced being Mexican American? And this could be like, what was the most impactful one, do you think?
I make the assumption that I'm a nice person, right? So I
Yeah.
just do things to be nice to people. And so this is I think my first professional job. Like I worked at a credit union, right? I had done a favor for a coworker, and they were older, and they had said, "Oh, you're one of the good ones." I don't think she was trying to be racist, but I mean that's how she was. Could have been ignorance, or who knows? She could have been racist. It's separating me from them. Like, oh, you're closer to being an American. Sometimes I think that some people say certain things because that's just how they were brought up. They don't know no better, type thing. So I don't know if it was just like, oh, well, her whole family, she's only been around her whole family.
Being money wise, right? So we're probably a different tax bracket than most of the people in Bellevue, right? However, I think it's exacerbated because we're also a different color. That's a personal experience. Some of it too is back in the day, people were trying to get out of the valley, right? It was a small town, and the way to better yourself was to get out of the little town type thing, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean success. We've been fortunate enough to have employment and things like that, because if we didn't have employment, we wouldn't last very long, especially in current and in Kirkland and the way things are changing. It's almost like the social economic aspect of it is intertwined with the people of color and Caucasian people, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because when you see a Caucasian person, you tend to think that they probably have a higher paying job, a bigger house, things like that. That's the assumption. Well, and then the other thing is too, right? When someone says me, they don't just say American. I'm Mexican American, right? And then right now with the raids going on, like the raids that are going on, ICE and all that, right?
Yeah.
Somebody white doesn't have to carry around their passport. I do. I carry my passport to show if something like that were to happen. I don't know if they, because the way I look, whether they would accept it or not. I mean, even if they're immigrants, right? If they're a Russian person or someone from Poland or Greece, as long as they don't open their mouth, they're not going to get asked because they don't look like us. Because that's not the target right now. They say immigrants, but they only mean one type of person. There's a lot of assumptions. Interestingly enough, lately, probably because of the situation, ICE and all that, it's like in my head, I'm constantly saying I'm smart, I'm intelligent, I'm articulate, I'm creative, I'm innovative, I'm funny, I'm witty. I come from good people. I am good people. And I'm proud of my people. I'm constantly saying that. Like I'm changing. I don't care what the outside is saying. I'm changing what I'm saying inside of me. I'm reprogramming myself because I know that there's a lot of shit out there that I can't control. But I can control what's in my head. So I mean, right now, that's how I'm feeling.
the misuse of woe. It cannot mean less than or second-class citizen. Isn't it noticeable that when we try to tear something down, it is due to the fear of their strength? Even if they were considered equals, they possess so much power, you still feel small. They can lift you up and or tear you down with their presence or their mood. Men with their fragile ego have to possess them as cattle to feel confident. Easier to control a beaten dog that will not stray past the imaginary leash. They know it is true. They know they will get away with it. Woe means they will endure. Look at them fight.
How have you dealt with and healed from this, like, racial trauma and confusion about your identity?
Like I said, it's just been more lately than anything where I basically, I have that chant now that I have in my own head is like, I'm proud, I'm confident, I'm intelligent, I'm articulate, I'm witty, I'm funny, I'm kind. I come from good people. I am good people. And
Yeah.
I'm proud of my people. I'm still healing still, but
Yeah.
because I think maybe I'm saying that because I'm not willing, too afraid to speak up, you know what I mean? Or
Sure.
to say stuff about the current events. I I think I think poetry may have been part of the process of healing, but I think it's more just gathering my thoughts and how I felt about it. Because we don't always have someone to talk to that would understand. Like, why would somebody want to listen to my sob story? You know what I mean? I mean, at least as a guy, that's what I'm thinking. But yeah, I mean, it's nice to put it down on on paper or in my notes in the phone, right? And to put it out there. It's just one of those things, and you have thoughts of that kind of stuff, and then you don't know what to do with it. I look like I put down a song idea. It's like I remember when I loved you, and then in parentheses while looking in the mirror.
What keeps you going?
I think what that one black senator, the black lady, I
Jasmine
forget her name,
Crockett?
but maybe yeah, but she's like super smart. She said was, "I'm here fighting for the generations to come that I can't be a part of," right? Kind of like when you plant a tree that you're not going to enjoy the shade of, right?
Yeah.
The people that fought during civil rights movement, they fought for someone like her. She's a senator. She's on, part of what runs this country. And just 2, 3 generations ago, they were slaves. So I think that sentiment is a driving force, but also respecting what my parents did. When I was 11, I got to go to school and play sports.
Mhm.
When my mom was 11, she was picking cotton, picking potatoes, and feeding her brothers. Because when all the brothers were born, she would have to help my grandma feed all the brothers and then go to work with them.
Yeah.
So her day started earlier, and that's because she was a woman. I saw I saw my mom, my sisters, get mistreated all their lives, and they lasted, and they treated me with the utmost respect. I mean, they put me on a pedestal. Women are fierce, they got tenacity. They go through so much shit, and they still are here. And if we allowed it, they could make this world a better place, but they don't allow it because they want to make money first. You
Yeah.
can't make money when somebody's saying, well, we got to treat people right.
So you said that a way that you got out of this, oh, I'm just American, I'm not Mexican, like, mentality that you said you were talking
Hmm.
about, you said
Hmm.
that it had to do with college and, like, learning new things. But Would you say, like, family or culture had any role in helping you understand who you are?
I think what helped too was when Gabby was born, I had a week off of work, and I ended up going to Mexico with my dad and hung out with his family there. I've never seen these people before, and they, and my Spanish was not very strong, and they treated me like royalty. It was like, well, you're my nephew type thing, and they took care of me. I didn't know it at the time, but my aunt slept on the floor so I could sleep on the bed. I was like, holy shit. I mean, that's kind of like, that whole family thing that I noticed from when I was younger, right? I always noticed that there was a difference there. When I was younger, more Spanish families took care of their family, and there was multi-generational people in a household, right? And I think my mom was trying to avoid that so that she didn't look as Mexican. But, when I went to Mexico, it was like I had never left. They just treated me like family. So it felt nice.
What does being Mexican American mean to you now?
Well, right now, I mean, I don't think American is part of the word. I'm just Mexican because as it feels like I don't feel included in the American part. So it's just, because if somebody were to say I'm American, they're going to say Mexican American. They're not just going to say, hey, he's American because of the way I look.
Yeah,
But if I were to be in Mexico, they'd be like, yeah, he looks Mexican, he's Mexican. Right? If I got dual citizenship, they're not going to say he's a Mexican that was American. They're just going to say he's Mexican. So I don't know what that means, but because I mean, the thing is why do I have to be Mexican? Why do I have to be American? Why
yeah.
can't I just be a human being that, is connected to the world and connected with people?
What do you wish more people like you live in this in between of American and Mexican. What's something you wish more people would understand about that?
I don't know. I mean, I think I would like people to just be more accepting of everybody's situation, right? If somebody feels like they're Mexican, why would somebody shoot me down for saying it? What happened to the community? What happened to the inclusiveness? I mean, because really that's all we're trying to do, right? Is to connect. We want to connect to something. I mean, I'm just proud to be who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm proud of the fact that I'm actually acknowledging the fact that I'm more in tune with the world than what I was taught.
Before we end today's episode, I want to take a moment to reflect on what this project has meant to me, not just academically, but emotionally. Interviewing my dad was one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had. These weren't just stories. They were memories that carried pain, pride, silence, and strength. Hearing about the struggles he's faced growing up in a world that constantly told him to shrink himself, to fit in, to stay quiet, broke my heart in a way I didn't expect. It made me so deeply grateful. Grateful for the relationship we have now. Grateful for the time I've spent with him. Grateful that I'm able to sit across from him and ask him these questions. Questions I now wish I would have asked sooner. As Chicana scholar Lisa A. Flores reminds us, quote, personal narratives, both oral and written, have been and continue to be a means of resistance available to marginalized groups. It's through these stories that I've come to understand my father as someone I can look up to, someone who has endured and continues to teach me how to endure. This journey I have taken with my dad has reminded me of something else too. The importance of learning where you come from. Not just names and dates, but the why. The history, the legacy, the truth. Because knowing our past, reclaiming our narratives, helps us make sense of who we are. If you haven't taken the time to ask your parents, your abuelitos, your tíos, your tías, your family about their lives, do it. Ask, listen, and hold these stories with care. Because this proximity to whiteness that we are all living in, this in-between space, our family, our culture, and our memories become a bridge back to ourselves. Before I sign off, a final poem from my father. Thank you, Dad, for trusting me with your words.
So there's no name to this poem. It trained all my life to assimilate. Don't make waves. Let them talk bad about my parents. Don't fight. Make sure you get that English on point. The invisible fence is brighter than the sun. I stay within the yard to hopefully get tanned by the words. You are one of the good ones. I till the garden to feed the ego of their social status. What I knew from the past that made us better was family, but they took that too. Drive family well. Get a career, leave your home, never see your parents and your siblings again. Nothing in common now at the barbecue, barbacoa. They consume our culture, sell it, but get angry if they don't understand the accent.
Damn! You hit, Dad.
Yeah, I like that one.
That was good.
I guess I should put out a poetry book, huh?
You should.
Editing and scripting by me, Alessandra Iriarty Canales. Music and poetry by Gabriel Canales.